Today is June 10th, Friday, June 10th, 2022. I'm back in New York. I'm watching the CBS this morning. Trying to see what's gone on or what they're mentioning this morning. Some sriracha shortage of whatever. And so I'm here and I'm listening with a keen ear. While I was away, in driving distance, there was a word that came up which stuck with me, which I'd never heard before, a schism. It doesn't come up in my daily life. The TV doesn't speak of it. I thought it an interesting word. My 9-decade-old relative mentioned it. Me being 40-year-old, not ever hearing it before. But in the context for which the ninth decade used it, it was interesting because later Lewis and I were driving and a conversation came up and I asked him the difference between schism for the way that the ninth decade had used it, and then he checked Google, and on Google they used it in a completely different context than that for which the ninth decade had used it, now that we're in 20th century. I found that very interesting and disturbing. I'm like, that would change the entire message. Because I know the ninth decade meant it and said it in a specific way, but the way they've defined it in this America is a completely different. It's just a changing. It's a subtle change, and if nobody has a ninth decade, someone who's 90 years old to base it off of, it really would get very. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to have that at the moment. So that's a. And then I come back, as far as like changing, it's almost, I feel like I'm in a project where they're trying to repaint the world with some language or some storyline that I don't understand. Last night, they had a very verbose, and I had to tape it because I had to put my son to bed, but I watched the beginnings of it with this process with the January 6th committee, and I was sitting there with keen eye and ear trying to figure out what it meant in the very little that they've taught me here. Well, and then now this morning I'm watching CBS this morning, and same area, like in the sense of it's in a USA territory. I'm watching this other side of the fence. He came from two doctors in North America whose message was very pronounced that, I mean, they were doctors, so they already had this encouraging and mind's eye as to how to conduct oneself, a vision of where to go and how to work within the social norms and systems. We're in an English only speaking system, but somehow he had French speaking lessons, which was interesting. And he's now in a very public position of power, and he knows how to use his whatever, standing on the shoulders of those that came before him. I was not born into this, I was born into the same system, but I was not actually given the same ability. Because again, he comes from two doctors, so there's some knowing of what a doctorate looks like, and like that's what you're supposed to become. My parents had words, but very little. They were not like dragging me through or building a construct of how to get from kindergarten to a successful marriage and a successful pathway, leaving me in some kind of somewhere between schism and sect and in a chasm, in an abyss type setting, for which I'm at the moment having trouble figuring out how to traverse or to get out of. So this is what this other man in the same US that I'm in was able to bind and set for himself, and now he's a great mentor and teacher to lots of people. Not someone I've ever seen, not someone that I have access to, and I don't have my own version of that on my side of the fence. I also found it interesting, there being a mention over the last few days of something called a citron, which is like the beginnings of citrus fruit. So, and then some family story that I had never heard of before, which I found very interesting. And I don't know why it's so quiet in my existence, while others have life pathways filled with so many words, so many experiences, so many pats on the back and congratulations and awards to themselves. And yet I'm just left in a situation with very little to even reach out to or for.
We are in the middle of graduation season, and for this year's class, it's been less pomp and more circumstance after more than 2 years of the pandemic. CBS News special correspondent and NFL Today host James Brown recently went back to his high school where he was a standout basketball star. He reflected on
They also said that his high school had this thing called a president and whatever. I've seen that in movies. I did not see that in real life. I think one of the like junior highs might have, but it petered out in the sense of it wasn't consistent. And at the time the movies weren't big, so there was no fallback of watching a movie for this pay attention and this rent space in your head as to social constructs that may have been missed in the field if they weren't, if there wasn't a large congruency in social norms. He also mentions that cursing was off, like he had great coaches and mentors. Again, he's in a doctor household, PhD level doctors, which I am not. So he already had shoulders well above the height that I was born into. And so there's not even a whatever. And he said that cursing was like forbidden, that kind of thing. But here's the thing, in this pay attention and in this societal norms, the New York Movie Theater Company, whenever they do like a New York, like The Sopranos was Jersey, New York, then they had The Wire in Baltimore. There's this underground, I mean, like, there's lots of pantomime. I go through the whole concourse of what I've been exposed to. It's not how I live my life. It's just there are segments where it comes in, because I was present on the field when that was what they were projecting as the norm, the societal norm of different tiers and classes that I've had to witness while I've been here trying to figure my way out, without this level of doctorship or handhold. But I see the beating of the drum. I see a lot of what he is beating their own drums, just how successful and important they are. And I don't really hear a lot of that on my people. I don't know why they've been silenced or where to even look to find my version of it, or what names to whatever. It's almost like my caricatures, my cast members, my mentors that I should be looking to. It almost feels like I don't know if they've been purposely withheld, if this is one of those social medias where they take a district and a demographic and they push theater things to try to psychologically damage the children that don't have these doctors and mentors set up in some way. I mean, again, humans are really disgusting at some level.
4 key lessons he learned from his parents, his teachers, and his coaches. This spring, JB shared those lessons with graduates from the Schools of Education and Communication at American University in Washington. And now,
I've never even heard of this American University before. Did not know it was in Washington.
he's sharing them with us.
My parents made it clear that the 5 of us kids had to understand that education and academic excellence were the
foundation stones for success in the game of life. The first lesson I shared was explaining my early education experience, which in fact was a tale of 2 types of educators. One who in the 5th grade saw me reading a book titled, "So You Want to Be a Doctor?" Without hesitation, she told me that kids like me don't do well in math and science, and I should choose another profession. Crushing words never to be forgotten. You know, words are powerful, potentially life-altering, especially at a young age and coming...
Now, early educator, there is in this somewhere in the world, an early educator already announced to him that that was not a career path to choose. Again, I don't know the career path he chose, but I know somewhere in the world the lessons of the early educators and following their words is important. Somewhere between an old world, a new world, and then this world that nobody's listening to and everybody's haphazardly advancing themselves in, and then very critical of others. Again, not quite sure.
Coming from an authority figure. Rejection is a powerful weapon against one's self-worth, and those seeds planted in the soil of unbelief can produce a harvest of failure. In fact, I did struggle academically until the 7th grade.
So now I didn't get words of encouragement or discouragement. I just did not have words coming from the people that I was exposed to, and I don't know why.
7th grade, when thankfully both my homeroom teacher and French teacher encouraged me by making it clear.
Now, he's speaking English. He's in North America for Americas, supposedly, based on where he is in this USA. But yet he's getting French lessons early on. A dual language. There's something in planning that knows where categorically that lays and why he was given such opportunity while some of the others did not.
Clear that I did have gifts and talents and they would help me. And those gifts would be developed with good old-fashioned hard work. That was right in line with what my brothers, sister, and I always heard from our parents, who were high school graduates with PhDs in drive and determination.
Mine did not have PhDs. They had high school diplomas, but not PhDs. The drive isn't there because you don't know that level of lifestyle or where that anchor point is. And without direct intervention by community members or leaders, it is very difficult to bridge that gap in this particular area with other things that seem to be going on in a time succession that some of this, for me anyway, in the field at the same time, it's very difficult to grow up and know what's expected or where to even reach for and what level you need to obtain to have certain levels of clarity. I'm still so cloudy, it's not clear at all.
The lesson here is that the best educators use words that inspire, edify, and exhort. High expectations from educators do yield fruit. Lesson 2. I addressed a concern that the future journalists had about how they would fit in this rapidly changing media environment. And I emphasized, excellence always stands out.
Now, how did he know about this social media thing? Lou didn't know about it until he was in it. Did not explain it to me. I hadn't heard about it until, I remember getting a phone call, I think it was 2006 or 7. I'm like, I don't even use a computer. What do you mean, social media? What does that mean? It should be on record somewhere. They asked about Facebook. I said, I don't understand what that is. I understand the two words, compounded together, but I don't know what that looks like or what you're referencing. But yet it seems like some people had an advanced knowledge that these things were going to become big or this is what they were promoting, while I'm just left in some rip current being towed out and under and like drowning, trying to come up for air and breath at the same time while I'm learning to swim to save myself. And everybody else just seems to be coasting along, knowing things far beyond where I'm at the moment. And I really don't see a hand out to help either.
To have an insatiable appetite for learning, to pursue a variety of assignments, and to be inquisitive. Heavens, I did a gymnastics event with the
Now, how do you become inquisitive when the social interactions you need have been withheld from you and you don't know where in your own story you are? Because, it's your head's bobbing up and down in this theoretical water. There's others who know far more than you and know what questions you should be asking. But there's no interaction. There's no anything. Everything's been withheld. Information, conversation, what to even look for, how to address it.
Olympic gold medalist Mary Lou Retton.
And then it feels like some are born with the answers, with a plan, with an agenda, with these anchor lines to pull themselves out of the rip current, like should they ever get caught. They have some other system in place so they don't get caught up in the same situation that I'm in right now. I don't understand how that was set up for some and not others, especially based on the misguidance of story that they've been portraying, which I'm sure goes back to yesterday. Yesterday, driving through different blocks of neighborhoods through a car system on one set of roads, and it goes from there's different flags and different languages, and then the population doesn't necessarily match what the flags and lettering is. And then I'm wondering, well, now are they receiving funds from grants and public non-for-profits and things to help these people, but it's the wrong population receiving this help based on the rectangles and symbols that the area is portraying. So now there's some kind of, I mean, again, it goes, there's so many layers of observations that I've made where things are just not adding up, but in so many different ways.
And I asked her why the men didn't do routines on the balance beam like I saw the women doing. Well, she sheepishly didn't answer the question, assuming I would figure it out pretty quickly. And I did learn to ask better questions after that. The third major lesson was to establish.
If that's how he learned to ask better questions, I mean, he's already standing on someone else's shoulders. I, in my local area, have Linda and Lou, 2 high school graduates, and that's the only level I've ever obtained. Pursuit of college degree, it was, but again, there's no career path that was ever shown to be successful thereafter. There was no real substance in any of the classes. It's not, we're not working within the same system, and I don't understand why or how it's been built that way. Is it built for other whatever to get further ahead and leave me like in a rip current, like drowning? I mean, is that what Americans are going with for the answers for why it's so not congruent in effort and in funding? And this is a rolling generational issue now.
Establish the importance of having an excellent foundation.
How you doing? So far, sir. How are you?
American military hero General Norman Schwarzkopf, in a speech to corporate titans, stressed that in his research of why many leaders failed despite their impressive skill sets was due to their lack of virtues, specifically character and integrity.
Character and integrity, yeah. See, here's the thing on bloodlines and storylines, when the caricatures are not given the correct hands to hold and calendar events to make so they can make the connections to get to and stay within their group or their life purpose, it does make it very difficult, and then it does challenge the integrity, and then the integritist that used to be a solid rock is all now like pebbles and sand on the beach. That one big gigantic boulder has now been whittled away to sand and rocks on the beach, and that integritist boulder is now all of a sudden little pieces scattered. And I mean, there is a saying, finding a needle in a haystack. I mean, it's more challenging while others are still maintaining boulders. So I don't understand again.
Roosevelt jeered as President of the United States.
That brought to mind the quote by former American President Theodore Roosevelt, who said, quote, "To educate in mind and not in morals is to educate a menace to society."
It's almost like that, because now it's like, oh, they're educating men and more medicine. It's, I don't know. It's just,
The fourth and final lesson, it's not just about winning, it's the way you win. Something I learned here at DeMatha Catholic High School from my coach, Morgan Wooten. He finished an incomparable 46-year career with the...
he also looks like he was allowed into a high school that had some big funding put into it. I did not have the same. My high school was neat and clean. But it was humble. It was not this outrageous nouveau riche trying to subterfuge, but like fund or like infuse this whatever in order to whatever. Again, different scales of things, but within some system where some of us are really advancing in large groups in scary ways, while some of us are just barely able to keep our heads above water and at times have completely been submerged underwater, and it doesn't look like there's a lifeguard that one knows how to exactly reach out to in the way for which the lifeguard normally is used to being addressed. So again, I try not to, there's so many things I don't know, which I know I don't know. But again, I am trying to do this self-educating from like remote view at the moment. So it's Star 19's, but I mean, again, here's their life lessons, and as an alternate, whatever, I get that, but I also see all of the opportunity that was bestowed upon this growing problem that I have going on as I drive through in New York. And that I've experienced and witnessed, but not just that it falls on one set of circumstances. It's a very, if it's a palette and a painter with a canvas, I have now like a gallery at the museum in the sense of there's been different very important pieces that someone somewhere in the planning department and in the professional area might need as how to better prepare for the children that they're responsible for in somewhere in the world. It works. I have not been I'm more of a, I don't know how it got to be like this. Star 1978, Star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza, it's Earth, Solar System, Milky Way, Universe, Galaxy is broken. And it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.